Hey folks, welcome to my channel. My name's Don, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about retirement options. Sound like a strange subject maybe for me being a bass fisherman and all, and this channel is dedicated more to bass fishing, but I thought I'd talk a little bit about it today because it just seemed like a good topic to discuss with everybody. And I think a lot of the folks that watch my channel, they know I'm 77 or 78, depending on whatever day I think it is. Uh, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about retirement because, I retired. Technically, I retired when I was 69. Although, I guess I'm still employed. So, at 78, I'm still working. But for a lot of people, they retire, at much younger ages. A good friend of mine retired at 50, 55. Yeah, I can't even imagine, being retired for 30 years and not having some type of job. Um, to me, the job kind of represents my life. It's who I am. I kind of have to have a purpose, but there are options out there when you retire. A lot of people look forward to it. I have some family members that were in the military and retired after 20, 25, 30 years. And, they get a pretty good pension. And, it's nice for them because they're able to have to go out and start another career and really have that additional income. Uh, but specifically, what I want to talk about is what I spent most of my life doing, and that is retirement housing. I got into the field back in, I guess, back in the 80s. Um, I started as a uh, kind of a salesperson working in a retirement community up north. And at that time, we were renting apartments to seniors, and they were full service communities where, in addition to what they called independent living, we also offered assisted living and skilled care, usually in the same campus, but in kind of different buildings. But I can still remember, I mean, I was, probably 37 to 40, somewhere in that neighborhood when I started in that industry. I ended up working myself up to a VP level, but long before that, I was involved in the selling, the leasing, uh, the marketing of these units, these apartments. And as a result, I spent a lot of time developing sales techniques, working with new salespeople, training them, teaching them how to sell, how to overcome objections, that type of thing. Uh, one of but one of the most critical things is, adapting to sales in an environment where your client is basically a senior citizen. It's a lot different than, out here selling sporting goods or another product or service where your clients may be 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. But the one thing that I figured out pretty quickly is people age differently. I can still remember. I mean, there were many, many times that we'd be talking to somebody that was 65, 68 years old, and you'd have sworn they were 90. They were in a wheelchair. They couldn't walk. They couldn't do a lot of different things. In fact, a lot of them ended up going into assisted living because there were certain things they could not do at, the age of 65. And there were others who were 90 years old and they're still out playing tennis and playing golf and going fishing and dancing and doing all kinds of things. So it was a challenge sometimes for us as salespeople to know how to really approach people as to who would be the best qualified or the most who the people would be that would be most attracted or most interested in our senior living accommodations. Now, I got to tell you, for some people, independent living, senior living is the way to go. There's no question. I can tell you dozens, if not hundreds of people that rented or bought these condominiums or apartments in a senior living facility, and it was perfect for them. It gave them the opportunity to get out of a house that was constantly in need of repairs, to get out of a house that cost them a fortune to maintain, to get out of a house that they could no longer take care of, and suddenly be in an environment where they received at least one meal a day, if not two, where there was an open restaurant or cafeteria where they could go for meals if they chose to, where they had an apartment that had a kitchen so they could cook for themselves if they chose to, where they had an activities director who every day had something different on the calendar. They wanted to play bingo, if they wanted to work on puzzles, if they wanted to do water aerobics, folk dancing, you name it, all kinds of activities, things that you never would have dreamed of doing if you were living in your home. But they were there and they were available to you if you lived in these properties. I think for some people, it was the perfect situation. For others, not so perfect. For example, myself, I mean, at my age, I'd have been the perfect candidate for somebody to call and try to talk them into coming into the property, take a look, see what you think, see if this is something you'd be interested in. Well, I can tell you, hands down, no way. There's no way. First of all, there's nowhere to put my boat. Now, they do have big parking lots, but I need a parking lot that has a garage and has, heat if I'm up north, air conditioning in the south, but also electricity. They don't have that down here. I mean, most of these properties, if you've got a boat, you're going to park it out in a bare parking lot and hope somebody doesn't break into it. So right off the bat, it's not just a boat. I got to have a place for my tools, for my workshops, for all the different hobbies that I'm involved in. So for me, a senior living property could never work, ever. For my wife, same thing. She has a lot of different hobbies than mine. She's not into fishing. She's really into gardening, flowers, trees, bushes, flowers of every shape and size. That's what she likes to do. And she also loves to go to garage sales. She loves to buy junk. That's what she's doing right now. She's out at a couple of flea markets with one of her girlfriends. And that's what really, really makes her happy. She also enjoys crafts. She has her own craft room here in the house and spends a lot of time. She'll buy this junk, as I call it, at flea markets and garage sales. And she'll bring it home and she'll paint it. She'll doctor it up. She'll put flowers on it, artificial flowers, or who knows what she'll do with it. But that's what she likes. And she can't do that. She can't do particularly the gardening type things in a retirement community. Now, some of the retirement communities do offer little workshops where if you're into woodworking, you can still go and do some work. Not your tools, somebody else's tools. And some retirement communities also have gardening areas where you can go in and you can have your own tomato plants or grow some different vegetables, but it's still not the same as if you're at home. So my wife and I would be absolutely not the right people to go into a retirement community. But there's a lot of people that would be good. My son, for example, my son is, I think he's 54, but he hates yard work. Doesn't like mowing the grass, doesn't like doing anything outside. He's really not into building things. He's uh, he's gone fishing with me a few times, but he's not passionate about fishing, hunting, or anything in the outdoors. His love is, computers. That's what he does for a living. He's been doing that since he was 12 years old. He's very good at it. And I would think if he were to go into a retirement community, as long as he had enough room to put his computers in there, I think he'd be thrilled to death. So for him, it might be good. It might be very good. I don't think his wife enjoys doing much outside either. So, they might be the perfect couple, even at an early age, to go into a retirement community because it would provide them the social life that they may or may not have on their own, but it frees them from all the responsibilities of home ownership, from the maintenance to the costs. Gone. All they have to do is go in and they have somebody there. And here's the best part for them. The best part is if something happens and they need assisted living or they need skilled care or they just need a medical person nearby that they can call on, that's what you have in a senior living community. You don't have that in your own home. Something happens to me or my wife in our home, our only choice is to, call an ambulance, dial 911. And, that's fine, but, having nurses in the same building can be a big plus. For some people, it can make all the difference in the world. I used to tell people, particularly husbands, women were relatively easy to convince to move into a retired community. They were tired of, the housework and the chores and the cooking and cleaning, and they were ready, to take a new step, a new direction. Men, on the other hand, they were a little more resistant. But a lot of times, I used to take the men aside and I'd say, I said, statistically speaking, you're going to pass before your wife does. Statistically speaking, your lifespan is going to be shorter than your wife's. Now, if you really care for your wife, if you really give a damn about her and what happens to her when you leave this earth, if you were to make the decision today to move into this retirement community, she would have the time with you to make friends and to begin a new life. And if something happened to you, she'd be in far better shape than if she were home alone in a house and then had to make the adjustment of moving into a retirement community where she wouldn't know anybody. So think about that. And, without telling them they're selfish, I think they got the point. And quite often that made the decision for them to join their wife in wanting to move into a retirement community. Now, the other side of it is one or the other, you or your spouse, one of you may need the services provided in assisted living or even skilled care. And if that's the case, then again, moving into a retirement community could be the answer because you could, by moving into the retirement community, prepare for the day when your spouse goes into assisted living or into skilled care, or maybe they need it now and you can go in and, still be near them. In other words, just walk from your apartment over to assisted living to be with your wife or to be with your husband. So there's a lot of advantages to it for certain people, but for other people, it's really not an attractive choice or an alternative. A lot of people just want to stay in their own home. I remember years ago, my mother was in the hospital. I was up in Ohio at the time, and I flew down to see her. And she was in pretty bad shape. they weren't too sure just how much longer she was going to live. And she knew it was coming. She had been having some health problems for quite some time. And I remember talking with my brothers, and we had all agreed that probably the best thing for her when she came out of the hospital was to go into a nursing home. And I mentioned it to her, and both my brothers were, they weren't here or there at the time. None of us lived in Florida then, and I remember talking to my mother, and I said, I talked to Bill and Bob, and they both agreed with me that the best thing we could do is get you situated in a nursing home, convalescent home, when you come out. And immediately she started to cry, and said, Mom, that's better than trying to go home and take care of yourself. The last couple of years of her life, we had actually hired home health care. So she had somebody there 6, 8, 10 hours a day to help her. But that wasn't quite the same as what she was going to need now. She was going to need probably 24-hour care. And we knew it, and we knew that she really couldn't go back home again. But she got pretty upset when I told her that. And I remember when I left, I went out and I visited a few of the retirement communities in the area. And it just kept playing on my head how upset she was. And I called my brothers and I told them, I said, she wants to go home. And she said that she would rather go home and die than to go to any type of a retirement community. And like I say, we talked about it and we finally all decided, that's what she should do. So I talked with her doctor, and her doctor actually said, my advice would be you should probably talk to hospice anyway. And hospice will then go, if she goes home, hospice will come in and they'll stay with her and they'll help take care of her. And so that's what I did. I remember going back and talking with her, and I told her, I said, Mom, forget the nursing home. Talked to Bob and Bill, and we all agreed we want you to just go home. And she was so happy. And, it was funny because I was half afraid to tell her about hospice, because I think everybody knows that when they call hospice, that just means you're going to die. But I did tell her, and it didn't bother her at all. She was actually glad to hear it. She knew exactly what hospice meant, and she knew that she was dying. As it turned out, I flew back up to Ohio, and I believe the next day, they took her home, and she was only home for about an hour. She was in her own bed, and my nephew and I think my sister were there, and she passed away. So it was the right choice for her. It's what she wanted. Had we pushed the issue and forced her to go into a nursing home, she probably would have died the minute she got there, but she would have been very unhappy. So there are some choices out there. There's certainly the opportunity for some people to move into an independent living situation with a number of services that they're not receiving right now that would be beneficial. It's expensive. It's not cheap. There's obviously a lot of different prices out there and different options out there. But again, I bring all this up only because I'm right there at that age. I never would have believed, that I would be a candidate for senior housing, but here I am. I'm the perfect age. there's probably a salesperson out there right now thinking, oh God, I'd like to get my hands on you because I could probably talk you into moving into our retirement community. But thanks, but no thanks, because my plan is to die right here. Actually, my plan is, my hope is that I go quickly with a heart attack and that I'm sitting in my bass boat in the middle of the lake, and that's where they find me. But it won't be in an independent living, assisted living, or skilled care. At least I hope it's not. So anyway, if you get something from this video, if it means anything to you, give me a like down below and subscribe to my channel. Again, this is a fishing channel. Kind of getting off the subject here, but got a lot of things to talk about, and fishing's not the only thing that I've experienced in my life. Spent 30 years in the senior housing industry, so I've seen a lot of it. And like I say, it's great for some people. It's just not for everybody, and it's definitely not for me. So if you have any comments, feel free to leave them below. And thanks for tuning in, and I wish you a great day.